Alira Stone was 16 when the sky turned red. She had woken up in her Berlin apartment to the sound of thousands screaming, not outside but through her comband. Emergency broadcasts flooded all frequencies. The global net stuttered as panic surged across the planet. Words like orbital kinetic strike, global saturation, and Valari incursion meant nothing to her at first. Then the first rods hit. At exactly 9:17 UTC, Earth died. The Valari didn't offer demands, no ultimatums, no negotiations. The Galactic Empire One humanity had only recently discovered struck from orbit with absolute efficiency. Cities vanished in blinding pillars of fire. Berlin, Delhi, Johannesburg, Cairo, she watched. Live streams until they froze into static. The last image from New York was of a man holding his child before both disintegrated. Into dust, the bombardment wasn't random. It was surgical, strategic, cold. The Valari had mapped every vital infrastructure point power. Water, medical hubs, defense nodes, and removed them with terrifying precision. They didn't even use biological weapons or troops at first. Just the sky, and it bled fire. Alira survived the first blast only because she'd taken refuge with her sister, Layla, in an underground medical clinic built for trauma triage. Their parents, world-renowned genetic researchers, had refused to leave the lab. They stayed behind to preserve data, to treat the wounded. The orbital strike turned that building into ash. She had no time to grieve, not when the shockwave turned the streets above into a swirling inferno. The clinic collapsed. Steel bent like cloth. Darkness swallowed them. Leela shoved Alira into a crawl space, shielding her with her body. Hours later, when Alira clawed her way out through dust and blood, Leela's body was cold. That was the moment something inside her broke, not from grief, but from clarity. She stood in the ruins of her city, surrounded by corpses and falling ash, and knew Earth was lost. In the following weeks, the Valari deployed atmospheric disruptors to break communication and slow any retaliation. They called Vasaze called. It a corrective action in distant broadcasts intercepted on broken satellites. According to them, Earth had expanded recklessly, threatening trade routes and violating unexplained sector protocols. It wasn't war. It was extermination masked as order. The Galactic Council had sanctioned it. Not one species raised. A voice in protest, Earth was alone, abandoned, declared too dangerous to live and too primitive to matter. For every survivor, the numbers thinned by the hour. Disease, collapse, starvation. The last Terran orbital station sent a final signal. No help is coming. Survive if you can. Lyra didn't cry. She didn't scream. She buried her sister, marked the site with a melted medallion, and walked. Not to run, but to plan. Over the next months, she scavenged, learned, fought. The Earth that raised her was gone, but its memory would live in her hand. She would make that memory bite. She joined what was left of the resistance, then outgrew it when they failed to act. Her mission was no longer to survive. It was to retaliate. Every Valari ship in the system had to pay. Every station that gave orders, every empire that watched Earth burn and stayed silent. The girl who had once recited poetry in Berlin's public schools was gone. In her place was something else, a weapon sharpened by loss. One night, beneath the hollowed-out wreckage of a downed escape pod in North Africa, Alira lit a fire using melted debris and etched a symbol into stone. Earth's former flag, now fractured through the center. Beneath it, she wrote one word in her native tongue, never. She would never forget. Never forgive. And from that moment, the galaxy had something new to fear. Not fleets, not diplomacy, not a military retaliation. 2 years had passed since the fall of Earth, and Alira Stone was no longer a refugee. She was a phantom feared, whispered about, hunted. Across the dark corridors of the galactic frontier, her name traveled faster than any signal. To the Valari, she was a war criminal. To the broken and forgotten, she was legend. Alira had escaped Earth in a stolen atmospheric shuttle during the final weeks of the bombardment, catching a ride aboard a smuggler's freighter bound for the outer fringes where The laws of the Galactic Council held no sway. There she found the Threx Confederates, a nomadic group of alien raiders and tech scavengers who had long clashed with the Volari. They didn't care that she was human. They only cared that she hated the Volari more than they did, and she did. The Threx taught her how to survive in vacuum, how to disable a ship's oxygen loop in a blink, how to pull plasma from rusted cores and weld it into makeshift bombs. They trained her in exocombat, close-quarter, zero-G brawling, and neural interface hacking. But Alira learned faster than any of them expected, and she began to teach herself something none of them knew: how to make revenge into strategy. She kept her distance emotionally. She didn't drink. She didn't laugh. The girl who had once loved stargazing with her sister was long gone. Her eyes, once soft and gray, were like forged iron now. She rarely spoke, but when she did, even hardened Threx, pirates, stopped too. Listen. From scavenged wrecks and stolen data, she began to build her own command, the Ghost Legion. A crew not of soldiers, but of the outcast and enraged, exiled humans, defected alien engineers, disgraced Threx tacticians, and others who had lost something to the Volari war machine. They wore no uniforms, only black reinforced body weave, marked with the broken symbol of Earth. And they obeyed only one rule: every operation must bleed the Volari. Their first strike came over the mining moon of Thura Prime. A Volari or hauler was docked, guarded by 2 gunships and planetary monitors. The Ghost Legion hijacked a cargo vessel, hacked the docking codes, and boarded the hauler under the cover of a trade transaction. Within 6 minutes, every Volari crew member was dead. Alira disabled the emergency beacon, hacked the gravity drive, and redirected the ship's course. It crashed directly into the Volari consulate dome on the planet's surface, annihilating hundreds in a single flaming impact. And as Thura Prime's moons lit up in fire, the Ghost Legion broadcast a chilling short message across untraceable wideband for Earth. The Volari dismissed it at first, a rogue act, pirates with a grudge, nothing more. But when 3 more raids follow, each faster, sharper, and more destructive than the last, they began to realize the truth. This wasn't chaos. It was a campaign. Alira kept her crew moving, never twice to the same sector. They struck asteroid mining rigs, fuel convoys, data archive carriers. But she wasn't just destroying supplies, she was crippling Volari logistics, planting chaos deep inside their most trusted roots. She started leaving behind symbol-scorched flags, human blood codes, sometimes even Volari officers hung upside down, their armor peeled away, with the Earth insignia burned into the walls behind them. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was message warfare, psychological slicing. She wanted the Volari to feel what humanity had felt: fear, confusion, helplessness. Volari news feeds began to censor her name. Military leaders refused to admit their losses, but it was too late. In the outer colonies, murmurs had already begun. The human who makes the stars bleed, the flame that walks, ghost of the burnt world. They started calling her the Black Flame. One strike at a time, she was teaching the Volari a lesson they had long forgotten. Humans do not go quietly into extinction, and Alira Stone was no longer just a girl who survived the end of Earth. The Volari Empire had never feared a single person before. They commanded vast fleets, shaped economies across star systems, and sat on the ruling seat of the Galactic Council for 3 centuries. But now, they whispered her name in meetings behind locked doors. They rewrote reports to soften the damage. They erased surveillance footage and censored broadcasts. But the damage was done because fear doesn't need proof. It needs a symbol. And Alira Stone had become that symbol. The Ghost Legion no longer struck only military targets. They hit soft points, financial data centers, civilian supply depots, and even interstellar cum relays used by corporate aristocrats. The purpose wasn't to cause maximum death. It was to make sure that every level of Volari society bled in. One instance, Alira hacked into a Volari Royal Estates AI security hub and rerouted their atmosphere processors to pump hallucinogenic toxins. The ruling family went mad and tore each other apart, live on their internal feeds. Alira never even stepped foot on the planet. She simply let them self-destruct. Valari analysts tried to track her. They deployed deep signal AI, bounty hunters, black ops squads, and interspecies assassins. One by one, they vanished. Some were killed in their sleep, others disappeared into vacuum. Few were captured and returned with their vocal cords cut, and the phrase "tell them I'm coming" carved into their skin. The Ghost Legion grew, not in numbers, but in reputation. Human refugees began sneaking into Outer Rim stations just to join her cause. Not all were fighters. Some were tech savants, medical engineers, or infiltration specialists. It didn't matter to Alira if you had a reason to hate the Valari. She'd find a use for you. Alien defectors began to appear as well, members of subjugated races long kept under Valari thumb. Some came seeking vengeance. Others just wanted a cause that felt real. Alira welcomed them all. This wasn't just about humanity anymore. It was about justice denied and silence enforced. And she had become the voice of everyone who had none. Then came the Battle of Varian Expanse. The Valari had constructed a deep space station, therefore the tribe believed to be unbreachable. Hidden inside an asteroid belt, shielded by orbital mines, surrounded by a battle group of 8 warships. Alira didn't just breach it. She dismantled it. The Ghost Legion arrived cloaked aboard 3 stolen cargo freighters. Aboard those freighters were orbital skimmers packed with explosive drones and EMP charges. Within seconds of docking, the entire power grid of Fort Detra went dark. Chaos erupted in the darkness. Alira and 20 of her best boarded the command ring directly, slicing through doors with thermal lances, moving with surgical precision through the halls. Every kill was silent, every turn planned. Want a massacre? She wanted to deliver a message personally by the time she reached the command chamber. The Valari captain was begging over the intercom for reinforcements. His voice trembled. His troops were gone. The station was already being hollowed from the inside. Alira stood before him in matte black armor, the Earth's sigil scorched across her chest. She removed her helmet, not to reveal mercy, but to let him see her face. The face of the world he'd helped destroy. You remember Earth? She asked, her voice cold and controlled. The captain nodded, trying not to cry. Alira handed him a data crystal. Play this on every channel. If you don't, the next fleet you lose won't be in the shadows. It'll be at your capital. Hesitated. She didn't. She shot him in the leg and walked away, letting him crawl to the console. And he did exactly what she said. Within hours, systems across Valera-controlled space broadcast the footage, a montage of Earth's destruction, burning cities, screaming civilians, satellite feeds of orbital strikes all stitched together with classified war crime footage long buried by the Council. Then Alira's voice came through, quiet and deadly. You took my world. Now I take yours one drop at a time. The footage ended with the Earth insignia slowly cracking into a rain of fire. Valari colonies rioted. Protests erupted even in core worlds. Whispers of rebellion spread to allied species. Trade routes collapsed out of fear. Council members panicked. They had struck first, thinking it would be over in a day. Instead, they had created a war no empire could win. And in the void between stars, Alira watched their panic grow. She didn't need armies. She didn't need fleets. Caltris was not a military world. It was something far more important, Valari's heart. Orbiting a blue giant in the Hyris sector, Caltris housed the central bureaucracy for Valari fleet logistics, shipyard oversight, and war ledger auditing. Everything the Empire used to fund and fuel its conquests passed through this one world. The Valari believed it was too vital to ever be touched. They had surrounded it with 10 orbital defense rings, 16 anti-stealth satellite arrays, a garrison of 5 destroyers at all times. No one had ever dared to strike Caltris, until Alira Stone did by now. The Ghost Legion was more myth than militia. News of her attacks had destabilized for sectors. Her face, once hidden behind helmets and shadows, had become a symbol of defiance, projected in holograms, painted on war banners, scrawled in blood on walls during uprisings. But Alira wasn't interested in fame. She was interested in impact, and Caltrus would be her hammer. She arrived not cloaked, not disguised, but boldly commanding a refitted dreadnought salvaged from a long-lost war. The Earthquake, black as vacuum, bristling with magnetic lance turrets, flanked by 2 stolen Volari destroyers, now painted with Earth's cracked flag. The fleet did not sneak. It announced itself by smashing straight through. Orbital Ring 1 in. A single blinding antimatter barrage, Caltrus lit up with alarms. Its skies turned into chaos. Velare response. Fleet scrambled from nearby sectors. But they were hours too late. In the first hour, the Ghost Legion destroyed 5 of the 10 orbital rings. Each ring was a marvel of engineering gone in minutes. By the second hour, defense. Coordination collapsed. Velare had never trained for psychological warfare like this. Their defenders reported hallucinations, panic attacks, mass desertions. Alira's fleet moved like wolves, coordinated, patient, and merciless. And then, she made her move. The Earthquake dived through the breach in the orbital grid, cutting through the upper atmosphere. Alira's voice came across every planetary frequency. You call us primitive. You call us extinct. But today, you will learn what it means to provoke the last child of Earth. She didn't bomb civilians. She bombed the shipyards, the orbital fabrication platforms where dreadnoughts were born, where fuel lines pulsed like veins, where engineers walked in pride and ignorance, were torn apart by precision kinetic strikes. Giant frames meant for empire building fell like dead gods into the oceans of Caltrus. Meanwhile, Lyra's boarding parties launched in drop of dust, small, fast, nearly invisible to the overwhelmed Volard defense network. Their target, the planetary Logistics AI Core, the brain of Velare fleet coordination. Inside the domed facility, chaos reigned. Dozens of defenders fell to plasma blades and rail bolts as Ghost Legion infiltrators carved a path through reinforced walls. Alira herself led the assault. She didn't order from orbit. She landed. She fought alongside her crew. In the heart of the command tower, she stood over the terminal that powered the AI grid. One press of a button could plunge Volari fleet operations into total blindness. She pressed it, and then she recorded a message. The same data stream was broadcast not just across Caltrus, but to every major relay the Volari still controlled. I was there when you burned Earth. I buried my sister beneath a sky you set on fire, and you thought you could erase us. But Earth is not a place. It's not soil or atmosphere. It's a people, a fury, a promise. You didn't kill us. You lit the fire beneath us. She paused and added, and now I'm returning the favor. Before leaving the tower, she set the core to overload. As the Ghost Legion evacuated, the Earthquake positioned itself over the tower. Its remaining charge enough to collapse a moon was diverted into one final beam. The tower disintegrated, and with it, the Volari command structure collapsed. The skies of Caltrus were smeared with fire. Wreckage rained into oceans. Smoke curled into the clouds like a funeral pyre visible across hemispheres. But Alira. Stone did not die. A cloaked pod launched moments before the Earthquake's final surge, its stealth shielding hiding it among the debris. Deep inside, she floated in silence, watching the glow of her vengeance spread across the Volari sky. She had sent no diplomats. She had offered no surrender. And yet the message was clear. Earth had never truly fallen. It had simply been pushed too far. The fall of Caltrus shattered more than steel. It shattered the illusion of Volari dominance, an illusion that had held the galaxy in check for centuries. For the first time, the mighty empire looked vulnerable. The Ghost Legion hadn't just destroyed a city or a fleet. They had broken the nerve center of the Volari, or machine, and they had done it under the banner of a world the Volari believed extinct. In the days that followed, chaos bloomed. Entire border colonies declared neutrality. Some openly defected. Velare governors abandoned their posts, afraid of being next. Logistics chains disintegrated. Shipyards went silent. Council allies began distancing themselves. Protests flared in Valari core worlds, demanding answers. And everywhere, people repeated one name: Alira Stone, the Black Flame, the ghost of Earth, the human who wouldn't die. Yet Alira did not bask in glory. She was not interested in ruling. She had no throne, no capital, no speeches of victory. She vanished again into the void, as if she were a myth more than a person. And in her absence, fear grew even more potent. Every unexplained system failure was blamed on her. Every explosion on a Valari mining rig, every assassination of a fleet admiral, every stolen come relay her name was whispered like a curse. Like a storm on the horizon, the Valari High Command grew desperate. They declared a state of internal lockdown, martial law. Communications were restricted. Dissenters were executed. But it was too late. The blood she had drawn was now infecting the entire empire. And then she returned not with ships, not with weapons, but with evidence. 3 months after the Caltrus assault, Lyra appeared before the Galactic Tribunal on Sol 7, the most heavily guarded diplomatic station in the known galaxy. No alarms sounded, no weapons fired. She walked into the chamber unnoticed, cloaked and unarmed, then stood before the Council 220 species. All watching in stunned silence as a lone human ascended the center floor. Guards drew weapons. Counselors barked orders. She ignored them all. Then she dragged something into view. A bound Valari admiral, drugged, bloodied, and clutching a hardline data crystal in his trembling hands. Alira's voice echoed across the hall, crisp and cold. You want peace? You want order? Then start with the truth. The data crystal contained records, classified logs, unfiltered archives, private transmissions, proof of the Valari's orchestrated extermination of Earth. It wasn't a justified retaliation, as they'd claimed. It was preemptive annihilation. Resource envy, fear of Terran growth. A political decision. Earth had been destroyed not for its danger, but for its potential. Every council member saw it. Planetary strike authorizations signed in advance. Valari trade corporations lobbying for open Terran mineral rights intercepted. Conversations mocking primitive apes as an easy extermination. When the crystal finished playing, no one spoke. Alira stood in silence, letting the weight of history fill the air. Then she whispered, You stood by while my planet burned. You voted while we died. You called it balance. I call it cowardice. The Valari delegate stood to speak, face pale, voice shaking, but before he could utter a word, 10 other representatives left the chamber. Not in protest, in shame. That was the beginning of the end. Within days, 4 Valari-aligned species severed diplomatic ties. The tribunal initiated an emergency ethics review of Valari actions, an unheard of response. Riots erupted on Valari homeworlds. Rebels seized planets in the Outer Rim. The Valari Emperor went into hiding. Dozens of systems declared autonomy. Empire was cracking, bleeding from 1,000 cuts. And at the center of it all stood the one woman they failed to kill. The one soul who'd carried the memory of a murdered world across the stars. Alira left Saltivin without ceremony. She didn't need to stay. Her work wasn't over, but the foundation had shifted. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy didn't look to the Valari for strength. It looked to Earth not as a memory. She vanished into the black once more, her ship silent, her crew fewer now, but more determined than ever. New resistance groups carried her mark, new alliances formed. Shattered humanity, once reduced to ash, was rising again, and forgiveness, but in fire. And Alira, she didn't seek redemption, she sought balance. She had watched her world die in silence, and now the stars bled her answer.